after the event. So good evening, everybody. Good evening to all of you who are joining our session tonight. And first of all, let me welcome you to this particular session of Work Avenue's Graduate Careers Month. Tonight we're dealing with PR, we're dealing with journalism, and we're dealing with TV and film production. What we're trying to do is cluster together job families of related jobs. So the point being that if people are interested in pursuing a career path in one of those careers, they might also be considering similar related jobs as well. Let me introduce myself to you. My name is Emma May. My job title at Work Avenue is Director of Operations and Employment. So with my employment hat on, what it means is that every service that we offer to anyone who's considering employment or careers pathways comes under my area of responsibility. And I also get involved a little bit in the running of the organisation as well. So that's me. I'm going to ask my colleague Hannah to unmute herself and say hello as well.
Hi everyone, I'm Hannah DeHunt. I'm one of the employment advisors at Work Avenue. I help with everything to do with looking for jobs or progressing in your career. So if anybody needs any additional advice after the session, please book an appointment with me or one of the employment advisors.
Lovely, thank you. This is Graduate Careers Month, as I said, and you don't need me or anyone else to tell you about the year that we've had and how things are, it's well documented in the media that young people and specifically students are having a particularly tough time when it comes to thinking about careers pathways, taking their first steps beyond the world of academia, beyond the world of study, into the working world. We're running Graduate Careers Month because what we're doing is that we're bringing together professionals, people who work in specific fields, and asking them to talk about their own careers pathways in the hope that what they've been through, they're thinking about how they chose their career path, how they applied, where they applied to, how they got their first break, the frustrations they had in getting their first break, and how their careers have developed since then. We'll demystify the process a little bit and hopefully inspire a little bit. So we're going to ask shortly each of the professionals to just talk about their own careers pathways, what went well, what didn't go well. It's really fascinating. This is the third session in a series of 7 different sessions. And I can tell you that so far it's been so fascinating to hear people's journeys and reassuring to hear that things don't always go to plan. There are glitches along the way, but things progress and there is positivity and ways of moving forward. And I hope that our professionals also will be able to sort of put their own spin on things and their own sort of top tips and, you know, and techniques about what worked for them, what they would recommend, and also red flags, things that aren't so good as well. We will obviously open the floor to questions. That's the whole point. This is a networking session. I hope you've all got loads of questions and interest for our professionals, and I really hope that you won't feel shy. This is very virtual, you're not so exposed, and it's a great opportunity to put your questions to our professionals. You can either do that by raising your hand using the icon. Alternatively, put a message in the chat, either privately to me, I'm Emma, or alternatively publicly so everyone can see. And either way, Hannah and I will pick up those questions and ask them. The chances are if you have a question, so do other people as well. So please don't feel shy. We hope to hear from you. Okay, I'm going to now start talking to our professionals. I think we're going to start with our with PR, with our PR2. We've got 2 people from the PR world at different stages of their careers, so it'd be fascinating to hear from them both. Ben, I know you're on the call. I saw you in the waiting room. Are you there, Ben?
I'm here.
Ben, hi. Perhaps you'd like to sort of kick off tonight and explain, as I described, your career trajectory, what's happened, what's gone well, and any tips you've got.
Sure.
3 to 4 minutes would be ideal, but I also understand that condensing a career into that short time can be a struggle. So keep it, you know, do the best you can.
I will do my best. Well, thank you for inviting me, and hello everyone. My name's Ben Allman. I'm the chief executive of a small advisory firm called Sanctuary Counsel. We advise on reputation and communications, and our clients are leaders of businesses, high net worth individuals, and some governments as well. And I've been doing that for the past 2 years. I started off my career actually in politics and policy. I was
That's next week.
That's next week. I won't dwell on it, but I'll just mention it because it was my segue into communications and PR. I worked for a think tank called Policy Exchange, and it was primarily research on criminal justice. And I soon realised that research was not my thing, and I much preferred articulating the policies than coming up with them myself. And so I guess it's just an example of, just because you kind of end up somewhere in your first job doesn't mean that's going to be your kind of career path. But what it kind of did show me was there is a world of, whether it's policy or in business or any walk of life, frankly, there is a need for communications, and being able to articulate an idea or a concept or a defense or a proposition is something that is needed by frankly all institutions around the world. And so that kind of led me into communications. I actually, after Policy Exchange, went to work in the Jewish community for the Jewish Leadership Council in a kind of communications and public affairs role, and that was really representing the organizational interests of the Jewish community, both to government but in the media, and other stakeholders as well, other faith institutions. And then while I was there, I was approached by the late Chief Rabbi Jonathan Sachs to be his advisor and spokesperson, which I did for 3 years, and be happy to talk more about that. An amazing opportunity, an amazing man who we sort of dearly miss, but an opportunity probably for the first time to advise an individual on their reputation and communications, and that was multifaceted. Every day was different. It was kind of high stakes situations, having to make kind of quick judgment calls on all sorts of interests, not just within the Jewish community, but externally. And then, as I often say to people, there's no obvious job to get after working for a chief rabbi. So when he retired and I stood down, I went to talk to anyone I'd met along the way, and I would advise you in your careers, any time that you are looking for a job, to go and see anyone you know who is even tangentially linked, or even not. I mean, actually, the person who connected me to my job after that was in mining, and he was the CEO of a very big mining company. And he said to me, "I don't know anything about communications, but why don't you go and see the people who look after me?" And that was a small sort of boutique agency called Stockwell, which I then went to work for as a director. We were then bought by a very big agency called Teneo, global PR agency, which you may have heard of if you're researching in this area, and then rose to become a managing director there. And as I say, 2 years ago, I went to start my own business. And I guess the thing I'd say, and I'm happy to answer questions on all of those, but the thing I would say is, particularly when you hear people like me sort of saying, well, here's my career path, and doesn't it all sound wonderful how I just went from one to one to one? And I can assure you it was not linear. There were many false starts. It could have gone in many different directions. I think when I was approached by the chief rabbi, I was looking to do an MA in terrorism studies at King's College, which if that had come out, I would have taken a completely different path. So don't always feel that there is this kind of one path that you must go on. There will be many doors open to you along your career path, and you should just choose the one that feels the right thing at that time. And then you'll look back and go, okay, I've built a career. Just one final thing on sort of the first start, which I guess is where you are, is I started as an intern, and if you can find a reasonably well-paid internship in an institution or organization or industry which you would like to kind of break into, I would highly advise it, because it does differentiate you amongst your peers. And when I was applying for jobs for policy and Parliament, and I applied to a few MPs' offices, I mean, there are hundreds and hundreds of people applying for those jobs. And I applied to one and I spelt the name of the MP wrong, and which I highly advise you not to do. But it was an immediate ability to just say, I've got 100 CVs here and I'm just going to knock off all the people who don't quite fit it. But if you get an internship, you can differentiate yourself and show that you've got experience, and maybe even the place that you intern will hire you, as they did with me. So there we go, first bit of advice, and I'll leave it there, but happy to take questions.
Thanks very, very much indeed. I think questions, please put them in the chat, or raise your hand, you know, with the icon, or hang on to them till the end. Either way, very, very happy. Ben, thank you very, very much for that. I'm going to ask Emma now. Hi, Emma. You are at a different stage of your career, but still in the same industry. So you are, you know, I hope you don't mind me saying this, Ben, but Emma's at a slightly closer stage to the graduates than you are age-wise, little bit. And perhaps you could take us sort of, you know, your pathway through sort of graduation and how you got to where you are, and any tips you've got as well. Also, if anything didn't happen quite right for you along the way.
Sure. So my name's Emma. I thought I'd just introduce myself a bit first. So I graduated from the University of Nottingham studying history nearly 3 years ago now. I'm currently an account executive at the consumer PR agency called Hope and Glory. And I've been working in PR for just over 2 years, and I've worked at 2 different companies during this time. So when I finished uni, I started a 6-month job at a retail specialist PR company called Neats PR. After that, I went traveling around South and Central America, which I'd always wanted to do. And when I came back, I started my new role at Hope and Glory. I would say I've been quite lucky with my experiences, as I've really loved it at both companies. So quite excited to chat to you, although a bit briefly, today about my experiences so far. So what I thought I'd chat to you about is why PR, how to try and get into PR, and a bit about the types of PR and my experiences, so you can just sort of see if it's something that you want to go into. So in terms of why PR, I think it's good for someone who likes a bit of everything and wants to develop skills in a bit of everything. So some of the key skills that I think are relevant for PR are being communicative, being creative, and working well under pressure. I think you might enjoy PR if you've always liked working with brands, enjoy writing and like variety. And as well as all of this, the parts of the job that I really like are the events you get to take part in, building relationships with media and clients, and just how fast-paced it is. In terms of how to get into PR, I think the protocols for work experience have changed a fair amount. It might be a bit different now, but some of the things you can do to get into PR is including just developing your network and contacts, so coming to events like these, just emailing around places to see, to introduce yourself and see if they offer any internships or work experience, and just showing a general interest and proactivity and excitement for the job, because I know everyone who works in PR loves when someone else likes it. And then just thought I'd talk to you a bit about my experience so far. So like I said, I work at a consumer PR agency where I don't specialize in a specific sector, but I work across a range of different accounts, so normally 6 accounts at a time. At the moment, some of these include Airbnb, Facebook, Barclays and Sainsbury's, but there's also corporate PR, financial PR or in-house PR. So I think if you're choosing this as a career path, it varies a lot, which I think's already quite obvious, so it's worth just digging into it and really looking into what you'd prefer. But I thought maybe a day in the life, if we've got time, might be a bit helpful, so you can sort of see from your level and my level what you'd be doing.
Yeah, if it's Swift, go for it, Emma, definitely.
Yeah, so although caveating, obviously you can't do in-person events at the moment, but the day starts around 8 AM for me, where we send round coverage, so where the clients have been in newspapers and magazines, and that goes over to them first thing in the morning. And then if a campaign has launched that day, to tell journalists about it, we'll call and email them also early in the morning. And then the day varies, but will often involve client meetings, team meetings, maybe taking a journalist out for lunch, research, writing a press release, emailing and talking to journalists about the different opportunities there are for your clients, maybe a brainstorm to come up with something creative, and so on. So it can be a lot of fun, but it also can change quite a lot. It's very fast paced. You're working under deadlines and meeting client requirements. But if you're someone who likes the thrill of all this, then I think it'd be for you. So yeah.
Brilliant. That's really, really helpful. Thank you very, very much. You segued beautifully into journalism there, which was really rather neat of you, actually, because we do have two journalists on the call as well. Clearly, when we try and cluster job families together, it's partly because they relate to each other, but it's partly also from our perspective, because people who are considering a career in PR are also sometimes considering a career in journalism. And the same people, although it's not directly related, are also sometimes considering a media, TV, film type career pathway as well. So that's why we cluster them together like this. But let's move neatly to our two journalists on the call. So thank you both for joining us, Daniel and, well, in fact, they're both on the screen as Danny, which is even better. I don't know who to go with first. I'm going to go Danny Caro first, simply because your surname begins with an earlier initial. So Danny Caro, hey, hello. Can you? Hi there.
You can all hear me loud and clear, hopefully. So yeah, I'm Danny Caro. I have been involved in print and digital media for roughly 25 years. And for me, there are kind of two main routes into journalism. One is conventional, whereby you, after your schooling, you gain a journalism degree. Obviously, English language and literature are very important, and followed by A-levels before you go on to your degree. So that's one route. Bizarrely, my career path took a very unconventional route. I had a Jewish schooling in terms of, I started off at Matilda Marks Kennedy, went to JFS, stayed there for lower sixth form. At the same time, playing a lot of Jewish sport, Maccabi football, and involved in kind of the youth club scene when they used to exist. And then from there, I was kind of scratching my head, like a lot of many young people. I wanted to be a professional footballer, but things didn't.
Of course you did.
For one reason or another. And then at JFS, there was an interesting episode where at the end of one lesson, my teacher, who shall remain nameless, she returned one of my essays one day and said to me, "Danny, you're never going to become a journalist." And that kind of stuck in my head. And I've always been the kind of person who's tried to prove others wrong. So I was resilient, determined, and if I couldn't play sport professionally, writing about it for me was the next best thing. So 25 years or so later, I've kind of enjoyed a very positive journey in journalism. And when I was at JFS in the sixth form, I did some work experience at the Jewish Chronicle and also the Henan and Finchley Times, being a good Jewish boy from Northwest London. I was at 15, I was offered a job at the Jewish Chronicle in their sports department, but obviously parents want you to gain qualifications, so I did that as well. So I actually left JFS with one GCSE and a BTEC, and then a year or so later, I retook my GCSEs elsewhere, got English language and literature and maths. And the next thing I knew, I was doing A-level politics, which I had no interest in politics, but the teacher at the college was a very big Liverpool fan, and I'm also a Liverpool fan, and we really hit it off. And a year later, I came away with A-level politics qualification, so I was very happy about that. And then wasn't sure exactly still what I wanted to do. I was doing a bit of writing on the side. This was all in the mid-90s, so I followed a few friends doing what they were doing just to stick with them. Never too sure exactly where I was going with it, but I went to the London College of Distribution and did a business course. And then I did an HND in leisure studies, because being very sporty and active and into health and fitness, I was pursuing something in the gym industry. And so I completed my HND, and I followed that up with a 1-year top up into a BA Honours in Leisure Management.
So how did you get your big break into journalism?
Right. So from there, I did Camp America at the end of my degree, and after that, so the matches I was playing in Maccabi football, I played in goal, and at the end of each match, I wrote a match report together and sent it off to the Jewish News. And in those days, they were fortnightly, called the London Jewish News, and every week they kind of published my reports without too much editing, and opportunity became available to go freelance, part-time, and then when they went weekly, they offered me a full-time job. So I started off just as a junior reporter there, and very quickly they offered me a position they didn't really have, of sports editor.
So you hustled them basically by providing copy, and you kept at it.
Exactly.
And it returned in your favour.
Very much so. So that was in 1999. I became full-time there. That was my first proper job. I had been working in a gym after Camp America, but still keeping my options open. But so I was at the Jewish News for 6 years, and then I moved on to the Jewish Chronicle, where I was for 15 years. So working across both print and digital media.
Brilliant. Really, really interesting. So there's lots of themes coming out of careers, you know, as Ben said, not necessarily linear, not necessarily in straight lines, and making your own luck a little bit as well. Danny Sheridan, what happened to you?
Yeah, thanks very much for inviting me on, and nice to meet you all.
Welcome. Nice to see you.
Yeah, my name's Daniel. I'm 26 years old. I'm a reporter at the Yorkshire Evening Post in Leeds, which is the local newspaper for our city. I went quite a conventional route, really, and did A-levels to start with English language and media, a bit like has been mentioned. And then I did an undergraduate degree in journalism studies at the University of Sheffield, which I'd highly recommend, which was brilliant. So
you took the vocational study route?
Yeah, I kind of knew during my A-levels that I was very keen to go into journalism. And through doing a bit of research, it was quite clear that you needed something called an NCTJ, which is the qualification for journalists, and that ran alongside the degree that I completed. So I went through that and did it that way. I completed my journalism studies degree, and initially came back and worked at a supermarket that I'd been working at before university for 6 months, desperately trying to get into some form of journalism somewhere. And then I came across a job at a national press agency called SWNS. They basically provide stories for the national newspapers on a daily basis, and are a major agency for the national newspapers and the tabloids. I got a job there and spent around 2 years working there, which was quite local to me in Leeds. And then I got a job as what I do at the moment, which is a reporter at the Yorkshire Evening Post in Leeds. I work on a live and breaking news team. So we cover everything that goes on a day-to-day basis, but also work on longer features in the background. But primarily it's everything that's happening breaking news-wise. And it's just coming up to 2 years that I've been working at the Yorkshire Evening Post in Leeds now. So that's it. Yeah, that takes me up to where I'm at the moment.
And what's your plan for your own career trajectory moving forward?
Well,
if you have your choice.
No, I get it. Well, it's quite interesting, really, because growing up in Leeds, the main local paper and the thing that kind of inspired me in the first place was the Yorkshire Evening Post, where I'm actually at now. I did work experience actually at the paper when I was 14 or 15, which was pretty mad when I came back and obviously ended up on the reporting team. So I would like to stay within the paper and hopefully obviously work my way up through the ranks within the paper and the different teams editorially. But yeah, at the moment I'm still obviously very early in my career. I've been in journalism about 4 years now since graduating. And like I say, originally was writing copy for the national newspapers, which was mentally intense. And then obviously I now work on a day-to-day basis on Leeds-centred news which changes day to day again, and there's a lot of variety in that.
Brilliant. Thank you very, very much for that. Moving now to our alternative media, our TV and film production. Again, we have two people. I think I'm going to start this time with, but we'll work sort of, well, we'll start with Ilana, if you can unmute yourself, Ilana. I should say at this point, and I think it applies to you too, Emma, it's lovely when we can invite back to our networking sessions people who have joined our networking sessions as students themselves at a formative stage of their own careers. They then launch their careers, effectively the wheel turns and our former students become our professionals. In other words, the people giving advice. And I think that applied to you, Emma, and I know it applied to you, Ilana, as well. So welcome to Ilana. Ilana's gone into TV production, obviously at a fairly early stage, given that she was one of our students a few years ago, at a fairly early stage of her career. Perhaps you'd like to take us through your own career pathway, Ilana.
Yeah, I did. I came through that and I actually spoke to Lauren. She probably doesn't remember, but I
was gonna say I remember you and you like messaged me and yeah.
Well, yeah. So
can I just say, everyone, a word of a good word to you all. It works. Okay, it works. Anyway, carry on, Ilana.
Yeah. So I am a researcher sort of / assistant producer at the moment. I work in factual TV. So sort of documentaries and sort of travel series and things like that. And I got into it because I did a history degree. So I've always had this interest in sort of storytelling and shaping narratives and things like that. And I've always also been reasonably creative. So I was sort of toying with the idea of doing marketing or advertising or something like that. But then I actually ended up doing my dissertation on advertising in the 60s and 70s and like feminist response to it, which unsurprisingly put me off advertising for good. So then one of the other things I did in my third year was a unit on the history of the modern mass media. And that sort of covered the growth of newspapers and radio and TV production. And also BBC. And I remember being really sort of enchanted by this idea of the BBC's initial aims, which was to inform, educate and entertain. And being somebody who sort of loves stories, that's basically what I decided I wanted to do. I wanted to share stories and people's experiences from different backgrounds and things like that. And TV is such a wonderful big platform, and that's what I decided I wanted to do. So I started off essentially I watched a lot of TV, and when I say watching a lot of TV, you have to watch stuff that isn't just Netflix, which may or may not be a good thing for you to hear. But so watching sort of BBC, ITV, Channel 4, Channel 5 programs, and what I would do is I would watch the credits at the end. If I liked the program and thought this is the type of thing I'd like to work on, I would watch credits and then write to the production companies and say, oh my gosh, I loved it. This is why I loved it. And do you have any work experience available? And eventually that worked at a production company called Studio Lambert. And they make sort of Gogglebox and The Circle and things like that. And I actually was put onto one of their casting teams for a couple of weeks. And that was my first sort of TV experience. And you sort of learn fairly quickly that TV is a very sort of transient industry. Everyone sort of, usually people sort of work at a company for a few months on a project and then move on. Not always the case. You might work in sort of development, which tends to be longer contracts. But in my experience, that's what a lot of people do. And I did a few different work experiences, and unfortunately, I'm not sure how it works now, but when I was doing it, basically you would get 2 weeks work experience where you would work for free. And I did that at a few different companies. And then one of them became a job. And I actually ended up spending about a year there because it was a really tiny company. And I sort of worked in development, which is sort of coming up with ideas for TV shows and writing pitches and things. And I was involved in some sort of pre-production and casting and managed to go on location a little bit, and also saw the edit, which was really quite exciting for that early on in your career, because I think a lot of people have to wait until they're quite a lot further in. So that initial sort of year's experience, it was at a children's TV production company. And that sort of year's experience gave me a sort of nice rounded view of the whole production process. And then I sort of went out into the wild world of production, and I knew that I wanted to go into factual stuff more than sort of children's. And since then, I've worked sort of in various production companies of different sizes, usually a few months at a time, on sort of factual programs. A lot of kind of casting and story finding, and basically finding the people to be on TV, which it's a pretty fun job, and you have to talk to lots of people, you have to get people's stories out of them and then sell them on to your producers and say why they're so brilliant and stuff like that. And it's fun, it's satisfying, because at the end, a few months after your contract, you get to see what you've made on TV, and it's a real sort of finishing point, and then you get to move on to something new and learn all about a different topic. So yeah, it's a really sort of exciting, varied job, career, and the downside is you're constantly looking for your next job, which is sort of freelance life, but it's worth it in the end, I would say.
And the same question that I asked Emma, Ilana, to you as well. Oh no, I think I asked Daniel this. Sorry, Daniel. How do you hope your career will progress?
So I'm very
5 years.
I'm very much sort of editorial side. So I want to go up to sort of producing, edit producing. I've discovered that I don't like the money side of things at all. So I don't really want to be in like production management and things like that. I'd much rather be sort of shaping the stories and being a series producer, sort of the head of a whole series and stuff like that. So
lovely, thank you very much. Now, so Ilana was obviously at quite a formative stage of her working life. We also have Lauren on tonight, Lauren Breslau, who's a bit of a veteran for us, given advice before. So thank you for coming on again, Lauren. You know, I'm tempted to put my tongue firmly in my cheek, saying that when Ilana grows up, she can become Lauren, but that would obviously be not what I want to say. Yes, it was a joke. Lauren, welcome. Thank you. Do you want to take people through your pathway as well?
Yeah. So I guess I left uni like 10 years ago. So that gives you, that's kind of how far on I am, which feels crazy that it was 10 years ago. And I actually did a lot of internships in PR. I guess I knew like I like to talk. I don't know. That was.
And this is why we clustered the families, exactly.
Yeah. So I started in PR, and I did some internships, and I landed a job in a radio and TV PR company. So I guess my job was selling in. We would have Gary Lineker doing a campaign for Walkers. How many radio stations can we get him on in the 8 hours that we've got him? So I would pick up the phone to all these radio producers or TV, if we could do TV, try and call This Morning or whatever and say, we've got Gary Lineker, you know, he has to mention that he's doing something for Walkers, but you can have him for however long. So started doing that, I guess, and then sort of realized, oh, hang on, like I want to do what these producers are doing. I don't want to be kind of selling it. Yeah, I want to be doing what they're doing. And then realized that I was going to have to kind of be freelance and be a runner and be available at the drop of a hat. So I left my PR job and was still living at home, so I could like kind of afford to do that, luckily, and left PR and met up with all of the producers that I like got on well with, I guess, and sort of said, I guess everyone's happy to talk about themselves, so I sort of said, you know, oh, I'd love to meet up for a coffee, or even just like through email or something, you know, find out how you got into your job. And normally at the end of each of those conversations, they give me a couple of emails. Oh, why don't you try this person? And funnily enough, I like work with a lot of those people, and they didn't get back to me. And I said, you remember I emailed you? Anyway, so yeah, but one of those contacts gave me the advice of like Facebook groups. Maybe Alana knows that like a lot of jobs that you get actually on TV through TV are on Facebook groups, that you can get invited to them through your like peers. So he invited me into one of the Facebook groups, and I saw some jobs, and I saw that the Jeremy Kyle show was looking for a researcher.
That didn't go too well, did it?
No, not realising what that would entail, really, and applied, and somehow got the job to do that, because no one probably wants to work on that show, so they'll take the risk on anyone. Had an awful time on that programme, but it led me on to my next show, which was Judge Rinder, which was like equally not as great, but he's lovely, and the show's a bit better than Kyle. But it taught me a lot. It wasn't like the nicest job, but I guess you take what you can get at the beginning.
I think that's a really, don't turn down opportunities. If something comes your way, take it and grab it and do something with it.
Exactly, and you'll learn something. And even it's just kind of taught me that, I guess once you've done something that's really difficult, like everything else feels a lot easier. So like nothing kind of scares you. So yeah, and then from there, you just, I guess it's the type of industry where you just make contacts, and the more people you meet, the more the more contacts you get. And I've done a lot, I'm freelance, but I've done a lot at ITV, because I guess it's where a lot of my contacts are, and one leads to the other. And when I was on like Judge Rinder, having awful time, I met a girl who worked in London and worked on a show that I'd really wanted to work on, and gave me a contact there. And then I had an interview and ended up on a show that I'd always wanted to work on. And now I'm very much kind of I'm like I'm entertainment than not factual. So I'll do like Ant and Dec Saturday Night Takeaway, Love Island, The Voice, those kind of shows. And I very much, a bit like Alana, like started in casting, which is finding the people to go on the show, which is really fun. But recently I've been going into the edit, doing edit work. Which is, I'm not techie, the editor does that, but I'm the one that will choose the music that goes on the background when they get a turn on The Voice, or like picks out, takes an hour interview and pulls it to a minute of just the stuff that we want. So yeah, that's kind of like.
Thank you so much. I mean, what has come through from all of you, all six of you, is some of the similarities, some of the differences, but actually more of the similarities about how you tried things, you got involved, you gave it your best shot, you didn't give up, you kept on going, you took any opportunity. We do have one question. Hannah has put a question that's obviously come through. Do Lauren and Ilana have any recommendations for someone who wants to go into the directing content of film or TV? Is it worth going to film school, or straight into the industry as a runner and work your way up? What are your thoughts, guys? Ilana, do you want to give?
Yeah, so in my experience, those technical skills, a lot of people, I mean, it's quite hard to get formal training in TV without doing like some kind of master's or degree in film and TV. A lot of people are just sort of self-taught, and when you're on the job, you have to learn to shoot and take opportunities, to be like, look, can I take this GV? Can I just do it? And then building that up, and the more and more jobs you do. But yeah, I mean, with directing, particularly in TV, you need the camera skills as well, because directors tend to shoot as well.
So you think a bit of technical know-how actually enhances?
Yeah, when you say director, I immediately think PD. So producer, director who tend to shoot, in my opinion, definitely in factual anyway.
Anything else to add, Lauren?
Yeah, I mean, I think in the industry in general, like just going in it, you don't need to, as well, no one teaches you anything in it when you're in it as well. You just kind of like have to learn as you go and use your common sense. But yeah, I would say you don't really need to go to film school, really. And it's just a case of, if you get into TV and I guess I quite early on knew, like, I don't want to hold a camera. and like, yeah, but I would, yeah, I don't want to hold a camera, and I'm not, the directors in a studio show are very quite like mathematical, and it will sort of be like camera one, camera there, and I knew I didn't have that kind of brain, but I think you just learn as you go, really, and then you hone your skills on what you want to do. Like, only recently I've realised, oh, I actually like the edit, so I want to do that. Yeah.
Kind of the same question to the journos on the call. One of you did take the vocational qualification route. One of you didn't. Both of you, do you have a view on that? Is it from a graduate's perspective? And, you know, we have a whole range of people on this call who are considering that as a career pathway. Will their opportunities be enhanced by taking that vocational training route? Or do you think it won't make any difference? And obviously everyone's pathway is different, but generally, what are your thoughts? Danny Sheridan?
Yeah, I could speak about that. Just speaking from personal experience, obviously I work on a local paper, like I say, and I know for a fact that we wouldn't hire anyone at all that didn't have the NCTJ qualification. So some people don't necessarily do that alongside a degree in a university. You can actually do that through college or elsewhere. But it is very much that if we got a CV and they didn't have that qualification, then they wouldn't get the job in that kind of stuff. I know from my own experience applying for a lot of different roles, again, that was the bare minimum. So that qualification as part of as part of the application would be expected, rather than, oh, that's a bonus if you've got it, if that makes sense. So if you are looking to go into the journalism kind of side of it, then I'd definitely recommend either only picking a course that has that qualification alongside it, or doing that separately yourself alongside. I've got a few friends that, for example, like maybe others in this call, have done like a history undergraduate and then done a master's or something at college that involved doing that qualification in a shorter time span and really intensively, and then using that to be able to get into papers or print. But I don't know many people that have it's quite hard to randomly get into. I think if you get to a certain age and then you decide, oh, I quite fancy actually doing journalism, it is very much then seen as, okay, then you need to get that qualification, and then we're considering you to get into it. Even work experience and like internships and that kind of idea, like they'd still expect that, because a lot of what I write as well needs to be like legally sound, for example, and make sure that you've got all the knowledge to do with that. And it'd be a huge detriment if you didn't have that qualification. So I don't know whether Daniel will speak differently on this from a different side, but I know.
Daniel, what do you think?
Yeah. So I would say there's no right or wrong answer. No. Obviously, some people go the conventional route. I think for me, it's about getting your foot in the door, and I think fate has, in some cases, I'm sure there are many journalists out there who don't have even an English qualification, perhaps, but right time, right place, and so getting your foot in the door, whether it's work experience, an internship, or because I've worked at publications where someone was on work experience or an internship without a journalism qualification, but they were offered a job because they showed and were able to prove that they, whether it was blogging or vlogging or just getting out there and what we call doorstepping in the industry, but just latching onto an area of expertise. In my case, it's focusing on Jewish sport, which 20 years ago hadn't been tapped into, wasn't really a thing. And I turned it into something, being innovative and having fresh ideas about how you can take things forward and cover them in a way that perhaps they haven't been done before.
So always think about what you can offer and, you know, what your contribution is. Make yourself useful, make yourself, something.
I think just to add to that and agree with what Danny said, I did a lot of blogging and that kind of idea during university. I think same as Danny said, like his certain passion, if you're writing about things that you're actually interested in yourself. So I used to do music reviews and sports reviews, for example. I'd just blog it on a website that basically had no one reading it, because it was for my own kind of just experience at the time. But then off that, I did get like opportunities to go to different gigs and review bands and get free tickets and that kind of idea. And it all leads to somewhere. And then once I actually got into the interview process for the Yorkshire Evening Post and the press agency, I used these actual printed things. So one example was that I used to write for Shoot magazine, which is a football magazine. I got approached at university for that. And I used that at the time because that was then actually printed in the physical magazine. So it's just a free way of getting into an actual piece of paper, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
Which is really difficult as a student to get any kind of opportunity or byline. So I definitely recommend that even if you're blogging and you know that 2 people are going to read it, just do it anyway, because then you've got it and you'll be able to use it for whatever going forward. Brilliant, thank you. We've had another question. Sophie's asked a question to our PR folk on the call. Interested in PR, really interested in PR, particularly fashion, beauty, consumer. I've submitted, basically she's been making lots and lots of applications, but not confident about the interview stage. Ben or Emma, do either of you have any advice about what interviewers are looking for in graduates? Funnily enough, I was going to ask exactly the same question. I'm going to start with Ben for this one, please.
Can I just ask, is the confident about conducting the interview, answering the questions? Have you been invited to a few interviews?
Sophie, feel free to unmute yourself.
I think just getting to that interview stage and all of the kind of things you've just said, just the whole process is quite daunting, I feel like, at this point.
Sure. I mean, absolutely, interviews are daunting. I mean, I've not worked in those particular types of the kind of PR industry, and Emma is right that there are myriad different options. You've obviously kind of alighted on one which you think is interesting for you, but I think that the interview is true, or probably for all interviews, not just in the PR industry. I mean, certainly when I've interviewed people, and I used to look after the graduate recruitment scheme in my old shop, and obviously now do the same, obviously on a much smaller scale, is you're not expecting people to be experts, particularly if they're graduates. But what I am expecting is to people to have a view on the industries that we're involved in. So if it's in mine, it would be business. And so I'll be asking people to say, oh, well, tell me what you should do in this comms thing, because you're not really expecting that. But if you're interested and you say you are, what's your view on I don't know how the Milan fashion show did in sort of COVID times, and how it compared to others, and just kind of having a view on the industry, because I think
it's pretty good for a non-fashionista, Ben. Well done.
Yeah, well, yeah, sorry, I probably completely mangled all of that, but just having a sense of the industry and having a view. And I remember, I'll give you an example. I interviewed someone for a work experience at one of my old places, and she did Latin as her degree. And I said to her, do you think Latin should be compulsory up to GCSE level? And she didn't have a view on it. And I just thought, you've done a degree in this, and yet you've not considered anything wider than you've learned what you've learned, but not actually consider. And I think that just, so I would encourage you to kind of read widely about the industry that you're going to interview in, and then have a view on it. And the second piece of advice is I was always interested in people who had something interesting to say outside of the immediate job in front of them. So whether they did a sport, whether they were involved in a particular society at university, whether they're involved in politics, whether they're involved in mountaineering, do they have an interest? One guy who we interviewed sold high-end shoes on eBay and used to buy them from a place which a wholesaler, and then sell them for a markup. And that's nothing to do with our industry, but it was just interesting that he had kind of done that to kind of fund himself through university. And so, and I'm interested in people who have a hinterland outside of, it could be music, it could be whatever. So I think being able to demonstrate that you're wider than just the particular industry you're going into says a lot about an individual, and can mark you out.
So you're looking for people to be interested and interesting at the same time, engaged and engaging.
Exactly, in 30 seconds, 20 seconds, you said what I took. 50 minutes to say exactly
Well,
that.
I don't work in PR. What do I know?
Well, you should.
Great. And obviously, Emma, you've probably been, I mean, Ben has interviewed, he's got that side. You've been very much on the other side, I'm guessing, you know, having to go through the grueling process. What advice have you got for Sophie and for everyone else on the call?
Yeah, I think obviously I completely appreciate that it is daunting and there's like quite a rigorous process often and it can be quite competitive. I think it might sound a bit silly, but just being yourself. I think personality is quite big in PR, especially consumer PR, and just sort of like Ben said, but just showing that you're just generally like an interesting person, and then you've got a bit of a fun personality, and that I think when it comes to the actual interview, just showing that the job or where you've applied to, you really looked at their website, the work that they've done, that you can talk about it. Like I remember like trying to stalk people like at the company I was at, like looking at their pay, like at their bio and saying like, seeing what their favorite campaigns were and then bringing it up. And they were like, that was so long ago for me now, but like, can't believe that we're chatting about it. So I think it's like showing that you've sort of like, because I'm sure you're applying to so many can be applying to so many places, that when you get that interview that you've actually like really looked into it. I think that's always good. But yeah, I think just being a friendly person is also really important, and I think that will get you far, hopefully.
Thank you. Very good. Has anyone, I'm conscious of time, we're into the last sort of 5 or 6 minutes of our session tonight. Has anyone got any other questions they would like to ask? It really is, Emily has put a question in the chat as well, doing a film degree, looking to do relevant work experience to add to her sixth form experience. Ilana and Lauren, any suggestions as how to get work experience, and specifically during COVID? And what production companies, for example, might be looking for. Ilana, can I ask you that question first?
Yeah, I mean, as I said, basically rubbing egos worked for me. So watching TV shows and basically saying I thought this was brilliant, and maybe sort of saying I'd be really interested in seeing how you did this during COVID if it was like a recent one. I think that's but things are opening up sort of now. I think there was a lot of there was a sort of a big stop in productions over the last year or so, but recently essentially production companies have just had to be creative and work out how to do things, so things are continuing, so there are jobs, as much as people are sort of saying there aren't, and maybe there are less, but yeah, keep email bashing, just keep emailing loads of production companies, watch credits, watch lots of TV, and also always have prepared like the types of things that you enjoy watching, and things like that, because they always ask you at early level, because if you don't have that much experience, they like to just find out a bit more about you and what you like.
To Ben's point, be interested and interesting. Yeah. Lauren, anything to add to that?
I guess like as long as you're above 18, you can like offer to be like a runner as well. Like that's a good way to learn. Just being a runner on production. So the same way you'd email them sort of asking for work experience, also like offer yourself for running. Because I mean, like it's really
just
simple.
In case there's anyone on the call that doesn't know what a runner is, only just to be clear for everyone.
Yeah. So a runner is like your first step in TV, and they do everything from boring like stuff like getting the teas and coffees, I guess, although they don't do that anymore because of COVID, but to like literally all of the things, you know, this footage needs taking to the edit, you know, can you go in a car and give it to the edit? You kind of do everything, which actually I missed out on running, and like actually found that I missed out on like learning a lot of stuff. That like you'll do things like you'll be asked to log things, which is basically like writing up exactly what's going on at that specific time that you're filming. And when it came to me being a researcher, they would ask me to log something and I was kind of like, oh, like what is that? But I would have known that had I been a runner. So you kind of actually like see everything, even though it does feel like, oh, I'm getting the teas, I'm the person like running around doing everything. does actually give you an insight into all the different like jobs of television, and it also gives you an insight into maybe what you want to go into. So yeah, you're doing everything. You might even be like, you know, looking after the talent and taking them from one place to another, but that's kind of what a runner is. But yeah, definitely like offer yourself for running, because if they like you, if a company likes you as a runner, they'll keep you, you'll come back, and then they'll give you another position. That's how it happens.
Brilliant. Well, some really, really interesting themes. I mean, the roles, the environments, the industry is so very different. But at the same time, really great general themes have come through about tenacity, about resilience, about keeping at it, about being engaged, about inquiring, about pushing yourself forward, showing interest, showing enthusiasm, thinking about things and being ready to share and express your thoughts, your engagement, your ideas, your drive, your energy, all of these positive things. We've come to the end of our session. An hour passes very quickly. It certainly has for me anyway. I hope you've all found this session really, really useful. I'm going to ask my colleague Hannah Dahan, just to put in the chat our web address for those that just need a quick reminder.
Sure, Emma, I've had one last question. When will the recording
Yes,
be?
no, go ahead. If people are willing to take it, I'm sure that would be great. Thanks.
It's just a quick call. When will the recording be available and how people watch it?
Okay, we are recording the session. It will be available probably early next week. We have the recordings of all our sessions. They are quite fascinating to look back on for all our job families. And we will be posting them on our YouTube channel and on our website, which actually just links to our YouTube channel. So they will be there for all to see. So do revisit and visit any others that you're interested in watching as well. So that would be great. Hannah, if you could just put our web address into, she has done, that's really great. We can help with any aspect of your employability, CV advice, networking advice, interview advice, transferable skills, where to look for work, how to look for work, careers guidance, you name it, we can help with. We have a team of trained, professional and qualified careers and employment advisors. Our services are all free and they're all confidential too. Do visit our website, take a look. We're really, really happy to help. Thank you, all of you, for joining the session tonight. I hope you found it all really, really helpful and interesting and inspiring and motivational too. It was really fascinating to hear all of our professionals. To our 6 professionals, to Ben and to Emma, to Danny, and to Lauren and Ilana, I thank you all for giving up your time tonight and all your really interesting and valuable insights too. I hope you all have a lovely evening. Thanks very much indeed. Many thanks. Bye-bye now.
Thank you.
Thanks, Emma.